thousands, in the millions, and we will be. Because it starts right here.
Guilty!
Welcome to Naptown People's Radio. I'm your host, Danny Abdullah, here with my comrade and co-host,
Derek Ford.
We're here to guide you through the pressing issues facing Indianapolis from the perspective of our people, not our oppressors. And as organizers involved in these issues, we're not just talking about the news, we're making it happen. So today we are joined by Stephen Lane, who is the treasurer of the Indiana Black Librarians Network, and he joins us on the 129th birthday of Mrs. Shirley Graham. She is one of the namesakes of our gallery at the Indy Liberation Center, a Naptown native, and a revolutionary. But before we hear from Stephen, let's get into the Naptown breakdown. What's going on this week in Naptown, Derek?
Well, in Naptown and across the world, or across the country rather, the U.S. government is in the grips of one of the longest running funding gaps in history. The ongoing government shutdown has already stretched beyond 30 days, and now food security of millions of Americans is at risk as the funding to the SNAP, or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is drying up, and Trump officials are refusing to tap into contingency funds. Approximately 42 million people per month rely on SNAP benefits and began to lose their benefits this month. While domestic aid faces a severe funding crisis, the Trump administration's drive towards military escalation against Venezuela, involving the amassing of immense naval resources in the Caribbean, is costing millions of dollars every day. On the morning of October 31st, two major U.S. publications, the Miami Herald and the Wall Street Journal, affirmed what many have feared. The U.S. seeks to carry out military strikes within Venezuelan territory, an unprecedented move and in clear violation of international law. So the administration's priorities are clear, right? Austerity and hunger for the workers at home, and unlimited military spending for the goal of regime change and in the interest of the capitalist class abroad. The U.S. government obviously prioritizes its goals, the control of oil, the violent assertion of hegemony over its backyard, as the Monroe Doctrine called it. For the working people of the U.S., the aggression towards Venezuela is not an act of necessity. We have more in common with the people and the government in Venezuela than we do with our own government. Speaking of, who we have things in common with, the IMPD has a new draft strategic plan thanks to the $250,000 contract with the consulting firm that collected 1,300 responses from cops and IMPD, 2,000 anonymous responses purportedly from community members, and a total of 77 in-person participants across 7 quote-unquote listening sessions held over the summer. And if you want information on that, you can go to our very first episode of Naptown People's Radio, where we talk about those listening sessions. The draft plan fits on half a sheet of paper. So if you're looking for a job, I recommend getting into this consulting business, and consists of a new mission and vision statement and 3, quote, strategic priorities, end quote, that are each broken down into 3 components, so we can take a look at some of their priorities. The first is to foster a workplace that supports the health and professional growth of officers and staff, recruitment and retention, blah, 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 blah. So let's talk about recruitment and retention. The current contract with the Fraternal Order of Police requires IMPD to have money budgeted for the 300 or so empty positions they are chronically unable to fill. Even with an increase in starting pay to $74,459 a year, which IMPD touts as one of the highest in the Midwest, they haven't been able to find enough recruits to fill all the budgeted roles. Around $22 million will be spent next year on officers that don't exist. So that could solve the food apartheid crisis quite easily. IMPD Chief Chris Bailey said those extra funds are being used for overtime, which is regularly abused nationwide by cops filling out paperwork, for example. In the 2026 budget hearings, Counselor Jesse Brown raised a question whether IMPD officers taking excessive overtime are responsible for the rise in police violence, such as shooting people because they're, simply too tired. Of course, that's not why they shoot people, but it's nonetheless a good question to ask them. The second is to enhance community safety through mutual support, trust, and understanding. Again, it's hard for me to take this seriously because it's like ChatGPT wrote it. But, you know, how can they achieve such trust or even understanding with the community when they edit footage to censor incriminating outbursts by their officers, like they did when Grant Snyder shot and killed Adam Sykes after an officer shouted to effing kill him? How can they build trust when the complaint process takes months to move forward with no communication? Devin Hunt was brutalized in June. It's November. He hasn't had his complaint heard by the complaint board. The final strategic priority is to invest in department infrastructure to improve efficiency, preparedness, and morale. So I don't even know, like, they don't even have enough officers. So I don't know how they can be more efficient or prepared. Morale, I don't know, with the cops in the streets, they're out there running wild. So apparently morale is high. And then also, you know, Indiana University is facing a lawsuit from its former director of student media, Jim Rodenbush. So Rodenbush's attorney claims that the university violated his First Amendment rights when administrators pressured him to control the newspaper's content. The university fired him on October 14th for, quote, lack of leadership and ability to work in alignment with the university's direction for the student media plan, end quote. The university's direction had innumerable victims this past year following the restructuring of the IU Board of Trustees, which basically, you know, are all appointed by Governor Braun. Braun used this power to replace 3 trustees, and it's resulted in university policy changes about expressive activity. And so the alignment with the university's direction means an alignment towards the right. We've seen that with the emboldened right-wing administration, the power to control one of the largest universities in the country. Indiana University will only be used to repress the dissenting voices of students, faculty, staff, and affiliates. To try and do what, you know, Rodenbush did, stand alone against the administration, only results in individual punishment. But that does not mean we are powerless or should do nothing as our rights are challenged. Our courage is collective, and it's time now to build the people's resistance that can stand up against this repression.
Lots of things happening in the country, in the world, in the city, obviously. But the irony of, you know, people losing their SNAP benefits, people not being able to eat, and IMPD, like, just having an excess amount of money to use on overtime, I guess. I had a conversation recently with a sheriff because I was doing some party work, and he was, oh man, I'm not supposed to cuss on here. He was talking a lot of crap about IMPD, which the beef between the sheriff's department and IMPD is always just so funny to me. If you did not know that was a thing, that's absolutely a thing. But he was talking about their overtime, and he was talking about how it's easier for IMPD to shoot somebody and then have to wait outside of their hospital room and get paid overtime to just stand there than it is for them to, like, actually do their job and put somebody in handcuffs and take them to jail, right? He didn't say it as nice as I did, but that was the gist of it. Nobody on this podcast is a cop lover. Let's say that. But
a cop lover. I haven't heard that before.
But like, just the, like, that's egregious, right? Like $22 million just extra, like $22 million extra
that they get, yeah.
That they just have, and
like,
there are people who are starving.
Yeah, like
Literally.
What about the teacher shortages?
Yeah,
like, do the public schools get that money? No.
Like, I have to, and which is fine. Shout out to my kids' teachers. But like, I have to, like, buy supplies for my kids every year. And not like them personally necessarily, but like for the class, right? Like, parents have to, like, give supplies to the class because the teachers aren't paid enough and there's not enough supplies. And like, there's also, like, you know, everybody's poor. So like, it's not really that big of a deal if I have to buy, like, extra paper for kids, but like, I shouldn't have to when IMPD has $22 million extra dollars that they could put into schools. Like, and there are people who don't have any food right now. The government is shut down, which is just like every time that happens, I'm just like, this is a joke. This is absolutely a joke. But it's not a joke to the people who don't have their SNAP benefits, who have to figure out, do I pay for gas to get to work or do I pay for food? Like this, it's not a joke. This is literally people's lives. And those who are quote unquote running this country are like, well, we don't agree. So I guess people are just going to starve.
Yeah. We got oil to get after,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, killing people, poor people in different countries. Meanwhile, kidnapping people here, right? Meanwhile, killing people here on camera, like, right? Like have their camera on and edit the footage so that like we can't find out, but we did find out because the people always show up for each other. And then to fire somebody because your lack of leadership and ability to work in alignment with the university's direction. What does that even mean? Like, talk to me like I'm dumb. What does that mean?
Right. Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means basically you're not doing exactly what we tell you to do right now in the exact way we want you to do it.
Exactly. That is where we are. And like, not to like pat myself on the back or anything, but like,
okay.
But like, that's why we have the podcast.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, because I don't need to censor myself here, and people who come on here, guests who come on here, like don't need to censor themselves on here unless they want to do that themselves. But we're not going to tell them to censor themselves.
And we're going to put it straight like it is. Like you asked me that question, what does that really mean? Here's exactly what it means. But like, the great reporting that's been done on this doesn't put it that bluntly, but we need to put it that bluntly because that's the reality, you know?
And right. And I knew what it meant, but like, but still like people, I mean, pay attention, to what's happening around you and where it's happening and who's doing it. Yep.
Yeah. And, I want to say too that, obviously this is, a lower year in terms of IMPD homicides against our people. And I honestly want to attribute a lot of that to the work of Adam Sykes' family. Because when they got out there ahead of the police and we had that press conference here, I think it scared them, it put them on edge. And I think that's like Nikki Schimper, like she couldn't save her son, but she saved how many other sons this year from being murdered by the police. So I did want to put that out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that's, right. Not to like be corny, but like, right. Like the only justice there is just us, right? Like we got to show up for each other.
I thought you said you weren't going to be corny.
Oh my God. I know you're rubbing off on me. But no, seriously, like we have to show up for each other and we have to make them not kill us. Right. Like that's as wild as that sounds. Yeah. If it wasn't for Nikki showing up, and she couldn't save her son, which cannot imagine the pain that she continues to go through. But like, right, she showed up for others and she, like you said, she's been able to save so many other people. No, absolutely. And similar to what happened with her son is similar to what happened with Devin, right? Like if it wasn't for the people being like, what are you, dumb? Like this clearly didn't happen the way that you said it happened. And how many times has that been the case? And like the people know, right? Like y'all are liars and y'all take our money and you go and you arrest people and then go back to their houses and rape women, that's what you're doing with overtime. I guess that's what you're doing with that extra $22 million.
But there's hope, right?
There's absolutely hope.
I mean, when we get together and we organize on our own, we don't need that, grand juries. We don't wait for them. We just get it. And we have we should have a people's tribune about all this stuff,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when the people show up for each other, which the people have always shown up for each other, but it's more and more, I think, now because of the state of the country in the world, the people show up more and more for one another and take care of each other.
Yep.
And that's what it's about. Like, that's really what it's always been about, is taking care of one another and showing up in community. You know, if I need something, I'm not gonna call the cops. First off, I would die, literally. But like, I would call, you know, Derek. I would call one of my comrades, like, hey, I'm struggling. I need this thing, whatever, or this thing happened. You know, depending on what it is, I might call my brother. But, you know, like, I call my people. I'm not going to call.
Not your husband, though, apparently.
I mean, he's right there. I would call my husband as well, who's also my comrade. So he counted in that. Yeah. But like,
I'm stuck in the, patriarchy.
But I would absolutely call my husband. Don't do that. But we take care of each other is the point of it, right? Like, and as repressive and as like dreary as things feel like they're getting, the more people show up for one another, the more the people like show that we out here, we're here for each other. And that is the silver lining in all of this. That is beautiful, right? It's like the people are coming together more and more. And with that, we'll be right back with Stephen Lane.
And we're back on Naptown People's Radio. We're honored to be joined by Stephen Lane, who is the treasurer of the Indiana Black Librarians Network, a member of the Liberation Center, and also through this work that we'll be speaking about today, became involved with the Fonseca Du Bois Art Gallery that is also part of the center. So welcome to the show, Stephen.
Right on. Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. So we have you on because today is the
129th anniversary of the birth of the great Shirley Graham Du Bois, who was born right here in Indianapolis.
I moved to Indianapolis in, I think, 2017, and I did not know that Shirley Graham was born here until, actually, I think you told me. So obviously, I mean, I know Babyface is from here, but like, obviously there's a reason why she isn't, canonized, and whatnot. So I'm wondering, one, how did you come to know of her, connections to Indianapolis? And then two, why do you think it is that that connection is silenced? And then three, what are you doing to, revive it?
Yeah. When I first came to the Indianapolis Liberation Center, I learned about Shirley Graham Du Bois from another volunteer who knew a lot about her. His name is Noah. He's still with the center as well. And I was surprised when he said that she was from here. Everyone knows of W.E.B. Du Bois, of course, but so little is known about Shirley Graham Du Bois and her influence on W.E.B. and on society as whole, not just here in the States, but all over the world. She had an impact. She started out as an artist and playwright, wrote some award-winning plays. And one of those plays was lost, actually, Tom Tom, which I guess we can talk about in a little bit. I just came to know her through a volunteer at the center and just learned how incredible she was. So when we had this opportunity to start an art gallery at the Indianapolis Liberation Center, we're deciding what to name it. Of course, because of her impact, we added her name to the Fonseca Du Bois Gallery.
Yeah. I mean, that's good because that's also part of reclaiming her legacy, and opening up, there should be a Shirley Graham house that all the, elementary schools go to visit and all the middle schoolers go to visit. And there will be one day, we can make that our next project, right?
Absolutely. Let's do it. I mean, everyone knows about, like you said, Babyface. We know about Madam Walker, who started a huge, business. But what about the people who are fighting for, everyday people, for working class people? Why is that history always kind of hidden? And we always hear about, Madam Walker and how great she was, but we never hear about what her workers thought about her.
Right. Where that greatness came from.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So earlier you mentioned Tom Tom. So that's an early version of she produced it several times, I think, an early version at Morgan State, maybe in 1929. And can you talk to us a bit about that play and what it was, what it was trying to do, or that's controversy around it or whatnot? I mean, again, granted, this is 1929. Shirley is still fairly young, single Black mother at the time, right? I believe.
Yeah.
And so and obviously trying to pitch towards a white dominated and owned industry, right? So I imagine that there had to have been compromises made, et cetera. But I don't know. Can you talk to us a bit about that and its legacy?
Absolutely. So Tom Tom was a 3-act opera, actually, and that included elements of jazz, as well as like opera kind of blending in with those jazz elements. And the first act, I believe, is all about early humanity. This and probably I think it takes place in Africa. And then the second act, I'm not too sure, but I know the third act was all about the modern jazz era that she grew up in. And so this play was renowned when it came out. It was nationally recognized as, this groundbreaking opera and play. And yet Shirley didn't get rich off of that.
No.
A lot,
Yeah.
like when Bill Gates comes up with his invention, of course, out of nowhere, he's a billionaire. But Shirley, for contributing to the arts and culture of this country and really trying to show Black history over time, over centuries through this play, was not recognized and was not compensated for that work.
But nonetheless, at least even if there were, maybe some essentializing aspects of African culture, like, in Jim Crow U.S., right, even having African cultures, right, as a centerpiece of a story and brought, in an opera is something in itself, right?
Absolutely.
To be, to celebrate, really.
Yeah. The fact that the opera was lost for a time, for decades, I think it was only recovered in the early 2000s when they found it at Howard University, where she worked as a music librarian.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The librarians. See, that's why we got you on here. That's why we got you part of the center. And so what else? I mean, anything else you want to tell us about her life, like, sort of artistic life or her, careers or anything like that before we move on to her political activism and her involvement in the movement?
Absolutely. Gerald Horne actually wrote a great biography on Shirley Graham Du Bois, and I'm glad at least one scholar spent time really uncovering her life and why she was important to us today, even today. In that book, he talks about how it was really difficult for women in the early 1900s to just get up and leave the house. A lot of times women, were expected to get married and have kids and just, be a homemaker. And I think Shirley, the way Gerald writes about Shirley in the book, is that she had no other choice. In order to leave her home, she had to get married. And it may have been a decision where she didn't quite want to get married. And in fact, she gets divorced from her husband before she moves on in her career with Tom Tom. Mm-hmm. And that's really rare at that time for a woman to divorce her husband. But I think she saw it as a way to see the world and actually the first step to leaving her home. And she found a way to make it happen. And, I think if she was just another homemaker, going and raising these kids, nothing's wrong with that. But I think Shirley knew that she was destined for more and wanted more. And she made it work for her. And I'm just astounded by what she was able to accomplish in her life.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of it was so bold. She was a fellow traveler, if not a member of the Communist Party. Is that true?
Yeah, in the 1940s, she joined the Communist Party during the McCarthy era, which
Okay.
when it wasn't popular to be a communist.
No. When you're basically guaranteed to be blacklisted and or thrown in jail.
Yes, and you can easily find her FBI file on Internet Archive, where the you just see like the FBI tailing her to different events, and they'll just have had like noted records of where she was speaking at, what engagements was she invited to, and what did she talk about, just kind of like little synopses. So the state was really afraid of Shirley Graham Du Bois, to the point where they were following her to all of her speaking engagements. Even if she went to like a birthday party, they wanted to know where she was at all times and were keeping tabs on her, because of, just how dangerous they saw her.
And she was dangerous because also of her internationalism, right? And her belief in multinational unity, her centering the struggle of Black women workers, that triply exploited, right? Those who suffer from triple oppression and who are therefore like the vanguard, potential vanguard of the revolutionary struggle in the United States, as well as her growing influence on her friend and eventual husband, W.E.B. Du Bois.
Exactly that. And I think even before she started moving into politics, like she was always seemed to be under attack by white supremacist forces. They got her fired from her job in Arizona at the YWCA, where she was the director. And, basically said that the YWCA was a front group for communist Jews. And these racists got her books banned from libraries, through these smear campaigns against her. So that must have been a radicalizing event for her to just experience that as she was trying to promote, Black history, internationalism, and working class solidarity.
Yeah. So speaking of internationalism, I mean, this is, we're talking about the 1930s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, really the, the, the era directly preceding the McCarthy era and the Cold War. But nonetheless, when there's a fierce struggle emerging between the Soviet Union and the socialist camp and the newly liberated countries on one side and U.S. imperialism on the other. And so, I know that at one point, both of them had their passports taken away from them. But the internationalism piece, I think, is really important because that played such a big role in radicalizing both W.E.B. Du Bois and Shirley Graham. W.E.B. Du Bois, after his first trip to the Soviet Union in 1926, he came back and, in his reflections, he said, "I saw clearly when I left Russia that our American Negro belief that the right to vote would give us work and decent wage, that our poverty was not our fault, but our misfortune, the result and aim of our segregation and color caste, that the solution of letting a few of our capitalists share with whites in the exploitation of our masses would never be a solution of our problem." So, he, at this point in time, wasn't an adherent to Soviet democracy, but he went back and each time he became more and more drawn to the Soviet system because he was treated like a human being, right? He wasn't looked down upon. And then he goes back to the United States where it's like Jim Crow. But the interesting thing, and I learned this not too long ago, is that he still, and this has to do with, this is germane to the discussion because it has to do with Shirley's later life. But he initially had a favorable view of Japanese colonialism. And in fact, in 1936, when he was on a trip, he's dreaming of a, united Asia and Africa. And like, despite, his friendship with Stalin and the Soviet Union, the Japanese authorities, tried to like, get Du Bois's like anti-war sentiment among African Americans, and utilize it to basically, not fight against the Japanese, right? Instead of not fighting in, for the U.S., which is in a united front with the Soviet Union. And it was really Shirley who was the one who explained it to him, like, no, this is the same system, right? The color line is the class line. And so, I think that's very important because, later in life, of course, they moved to Africa, where, Du Bois dies. But, before we get there and jump too much ahead, I wanted to just get your thoughts on that, on the role of the sort of politicization of both, because I think it worked both ways, undoubtedly, right?
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, like Shirley Graham was getting so much notoriety and attention from her being a playwright, and saw no success, like financial success from that, which was, you know, devastating to be someone who knows that she's great and she puts out great work, yet there's no money to help get her there. And as she was going later through life and making all of these connections across the states and around the world, in China and the Soviet Union and in Ghana, she then started to see more financial support come in. And Gerald Horne makes the point, like, as she gained more financially, she fought harder because she had
Interesting.
a foundation to fight from. Really, she created a foundation for herself to fight even harder from. And a lot of people, when they make it or hit the big time, they just stay in their lane. They keep their head down. But she was still making waves. Like, she was like, okay, now that I'm here, how do I get other people here with me? How do I raise up the bottom with me? Like, she was a person that kind of lifted as she climbed. And I think she respected W.E.B. Du Bois so much. Her father actually introduced them when she was 13.
Okay.
So, they had a long relationship, a long friendship. And so as she saw W.E.B. Du Bois make these statements and make these claims, I think she would always write to him and or talk to him about, why he was wrong.
I love it. But yeah, just imagine, right? Penning, but he was a humble person, of course.
Yes.
I believe that the preface to The Souls of Black Folk was like, I hadn't read Marx yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to preface this book with that. I hadn't yet read Marx. And interestingly, of course, Lenin, as they were formulating the theses on the Black nation in the U.S., was drawing on demographic information, census data that Du Bois was collecting. At least that's sort of what we posit. And so it is in 1956, right, when when Du Bois joins the Communist Party, and then a couple months later they moved to Ghana. And I don't know, Dr. Sharice Bernstelli told me that, Du Bois is always skeptical of the possibility of multinational unity in the United States. But nonetheless, joined the CP. And this is 1956, after the quote unquote, secret speech of Khrushchev, right? After the intervention in Hungary. And in fact, he goes to bat for, Paul Robeson for, defending the Soviet intervention in Hungary, which, we wish wouldn't have happened, but needed to as a progressive development. So you can't really, say he was like, brainwashed by Stalin or anything like that. And then they go to Ghana. And so what, can you tell me about that era, that phase in their lives? Or
Yeah, in Ghana, Shirley was given a director position over the television of basically creating a way for Ghana to have its own kind of art and culture through television. And so Kwame Nkrumah, who she had a good relationship with, appointed her as the director of basically arts and culture, I want to say. And she produced a lot of classes on how to write scripts for television, how to make it actually work. And she was also promoting African unity across the continent. So in 1958, she gave a speech at All African People's Conference, which was a conference that had 62 African national liberation organizations present. And she basically says that the future of Africa as a whole is socialism. And there's a quote here where she says, Africa, ancient Africa has been called by the world and has lifted up her hands. Africa has no choice between private capitalism and socialism. The whole world, including capitalist countries, is moving towards socialism, inevitably, inexorably. You can choose between blocks of military alliance. You can choose between groups of political union. You cannot choose between socialism and private capitalism because private capitalism is doomed. You know, she had that thought in 1958, and I think to see where Africa is now, especially in the Sahel, with all these countries coming together, I think she's just proving us all right. Like the path forward for all of us is working class solidarity, and it is a system that supports working class interests and people.
And she, of course, outlived her husband and continued to have a profound impact on the movement. I'd like to read actually a letter of condolences sent by Chairman Kim Il-sung of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea on August 12th from Pyongyang that says, on receiving the sad news of Dr. William Du Bois's death, distinguished peace champion and scholar, I tender on behalf of the government of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the Korean people profound condolences to you and other members of his bereaved family. His unflinching struggle against the racial discrimination policy of the imperialists and for safeguarding peace, as well as his contributions, will remain forever in the memory of the Korean people. Encouraged by the lofty idea of Dr. William Du Bois of celebrating and liberating the whole mankind, the struggle of the oppressed peoples of the world against imperialism and colonialism for freedom and liberation will develop still more vigorously and win final victory definitely. Kim Il-sung, Premier of Cabinet, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Pyongyang, September 2nd, 1963. So that's quite an honor, right? And speaks to her internationalism. And so she stayed in Ghana for a while, as many others did. Queen Audley More went to Ghana. That's where she became Queen Mother Audley More. And then she ended up going to the Soviet Union, the People's Republic of China. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And
she was very much a part of the Cultural Revolution that took place in China. She was supporting a lot of women's groups and promoting feminist thought in Chinese politics. So her impact doesn't just touch on the States, right? Like we've talked on that she went to Africa. She was in China for a good deal of her life. And even at the end of her life was spent in China just supporting the people, supporting socialism and learning and growing alongside the people there.
Yeah. And, when Shirley Graham Du Bois died on March 27, 1977, she was actually buried in the cemetery for revolutionary heroes in Beijing, alongside, the anti-colonial, anti-guerrilla, the guerrilla, anti-Japanese communist fighters, the Communist Party chairman, and former Premier Zhao, as well as embassies of, Tanzania, Ghana, Zambia, all attended. And her work there, really speaks to the fact that her work wasn't confined there. It was actually, she was contributing to the Black scholar in the United States, right? And she was engaged in fierce polemics with other trends in the Black movement. But, I think it'd be apropos to end with one of her later contributions, April 1975, called Together We Struggle, Together We Win. So she's saying that, she's returned from the vast, bountiful cradle of Black peoples, the land of our forefathers, the land of sunshine and wide, deep rivers. And it's a happy birthday greeting to the Black scholar, to its founding publisher, its editors, and all those members of the staff, which for 5 years have labored so valiantly, so unselfishly, so tirelessly to produce this excellent magazine. And so she says, it's welcome in universities because people see it on the mark, right? But actually, 5 years is a very short time, right? The civil rights campaigns were vigorously, often dramatically carried on. There were, the peace demonstrations. A lot happened between, 1970 and 1975. But her conclusion is really that we in the third world, we rejoice when the, National Front for the Liberation of Angola, right, won. When Frelimo, took power in Mozambique, and so did the progressive Black people and movements in the United States, and so did the Palestinian people, right? And so she ends with this by saying, lift up your heads and look beyond narrow confines like the nation, or the country. We, the people, have much cause to rejoice. Black people have cause to celebrate. The third world, the world of color, no longer slumbers. Everywhere there is movement. Everywhere is a sound of marching feet coming on, coming on. And so obviously after that, there was a period of harsh reaction. But, as you hinted to earlier with the Alliance of Sahel States, we see nonetheless, resistance never stops. And so, what's the next step for this? Here we are, we want to bring Shirley back to her, her homeland, her home. And we want to, bring our people awareness that this is our home. And we encourage everybody to do your own research into Shirley Graham and W.E.B. Du Bois. But, what can we do to really make sure that the peoples of the third world, the peoples, the oppressed, dispossessed, exploited everywhere keep marching on?
Yeah, I think Shirley Graham Du Bois is a great example of what it means to be from Indianapolis. There's so much propaganda out there that this is Indianapolis and nothing happens here.
Right.
But if you actually dig into the history of Indianapolis, you'll see that a lot of radical politics happens here in this city, and a lot of radical people come out of this city that really do change the narrative, that have this huge impact, that push the movement forward, that push the struggle forward for working class people. And Shirley Graham Du Bois definitely deserves her honor. She deserves the respect of the people of Indianapolis for what she's contributed to society to today. And I think that any of us here in Indianapolis can be assured that we can do something in our city. We can do something in this world that has an impact greater than the level of Shirley Graham Du Bois. And I'm sure she would very much welcome that.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. Thank you so much, Stephen, for your time. I know you're very busy. But once again, that's been Stephen Lane, the treasurer of the Indiana Black Librarians Network, and also a volunteer with the Fonseca Du Bois Gallery at the Indianapolis Liberation Center, which is, if we haven't mentioned yet, officially moving to 1619 Prospect Street in the near future. So be on the lookout for our grand opening and details about that. Stephen's been very busy helping us make that happen. So thank you again, Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
And if people want to find out more, get in touch with you, how can they do that? You're on Twitter, you're on email, whatever.
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Naptown Source.
We'll put in the show notes.
You'll find me.
All right.
Yes.
And I sounded old. I'm like, are you on the email? Yeah, Stephen's on the email. Okay.
I do have an email, a few.
And you can actually find that at the Liberation Center website.
That's right, yes.
All right. Well, thank you again, Stephen. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Derek.
All right. After a short break, we'll be right back.
Yeah. Recognize the revolution. Recognize the revolution. Recognize the revolution.
And we're back on Naptown People's Radio. So, Danny, who gets a Circle City shout out this week?
So this week's Circle City shout out goes to Ladina Brown. So Ladina is the founder and editor of Midwest League magazine. It's our region's premier magazine for hip hop culture, music, and more. If you know any people inside our prisons and jails, you know it's their light into the world. They're located at 2700 East 55th Place, and they're more than a magazine. They have a wonderful bookshop. They host book talks. You can put on events there where they'll take care of everything. They do marketing, sell amazing merchandise, and also always stand with the people no matter if it's popular or not. Speaking of that, be sure to go to freevernon.org to check out Vernon T. Bateman's interview with Midwest Leak magazine titled Art, Resilience, and Fighting for Freedom. So, like I always say, like, showing up for the people looks different depending on who you are, depending on like what does your calling look like. So for Ladina, it looks like, well, like I said, it's more than a magazine, but it looks like Midwest League magazine, right? Which is, you know, art, which is like talking to the people with our own language, you know. So no matter what it looks like, do it. If you feel like this is for the people, this is how I can help the people, you know, get out there and do it. So shout out to Ladina.
All right. So a couple of events coming up this week, and then some very exciting news, official news. First, join your fellow community members as we collectively honor, remember, and grieve the lives lost in ICE custody this Saturday, November 8th, between 6 and 8 p.m. at North United Church, which is at 3808 North Meridian Street. You can find out more details at indialiberationcenter.org. And I am very honored to officially announce that the Liberation Center is moving into a new, beautiful storefront space that's going to be all ours, 1619 Prospect Street. So that means that all of our regular programming is returning soon. So Circle City Sangha will be there the 15th between 9:30 and 11 a.m. We've got a Liberation Forum November 19th between 6 and 8 p.m. and so much more. We're really excited for everybody to see this space. It's really, if you went to our last, center, which was a true community hub for organizing and action and study and reflection and praxis, this is going to open up so many more doors for us, and it's going to really, unite the movement even more and advance our class's mission, the mission of all exploited and oppressed people in Indianapolis and beyond. So that's it for this episode of Naptown People's Radio. If you found today's discussion useful, pass it on, leave a comment, and listen for our next episode to drop. You can email us at producer@naptownpeoplesradio.com. The road ahead is long, but remember, we walk it together. Study with your comrades, build with the community, and always remember, theory without action is chaos, but action without theory is paralysis. I'm your host, Derek Ford, with my co-host,
Danny Abdullah.
Stay dangerous, stay disciplined, and stay in the struggle.
We trying to create a movement. We got a chance to do something in Indiana that brothers like myself been talking about for the last 40 years. When I first became political and we was organized behind the walls in the 80s and 90s, some of the stuff that we doing now with the different programs and the different institutions that we have and things like the Indy Center is things that we used to talk about and dream about doing. And now we doing them. See what I'm saying? We doing it. And we got to keep that momentum going, and it's also generation. So as the next generation come up, you know what I'm saying, it's on y'all to take it to the next level and take it to the next stage.
Salute, Shakur.